now he's changed his name to Digitally Mad. Welcome, Ratnadeep. And take over the scene, sir.
Mic test, yeah. Good morning, everyone. So this is a very sacred, pavan, pavitra time slot for giving a talk. I had given a talk titled Reading Ruby, a visual walkthrough of the source code last year at the same time on the second day. So I have experience of giving the talk at this time. So it is very sacred, and the reason for that is because I couldn't party much because I have a talk to give. And the people who are here are the only ones who couldn't party much because whoever partied can't make it in time for the talk, right? So that's why I say that. Let's get started. So my name is Ratnadeep. RTDP is my username. You can find me with that on the GitHub, Twitter, or X. About me, that's something that's already been talked about, so I wouldn't spend much time. But apart from the travel, I am also interested in mechanical keyboards. So talk to me if you are also interested in that. This is one of the projects that I have done. It solves a problem for me. I like to look at the technical talks, discover them, and learn from it. I was seeing that it is a little harder to get good talks discovered, and which is why I built this website, where what you can do is go and see what are the trending talks, what are the conference-based different talks, and look at them. I also have some stickers, so find me after the talk, and I will share some of those. This is the company that I run, Betacraft Technologies. We work in Ruby on Rails. We work in a consulting. We are close to 50 people strong team, and we are also looking for more people to join our team. So check our careers page. So reading Rails, a visual walkthrough of the source code. Last year, my talk was reading Ruby, a visual walkthrough of the source code, and the purpose was to give a visual representation of what the source code looks like, where to start, what to look at, what to not look at, so that you can understand and make it easier to get started with reading the Ruby source code. So this year I'm going to try that with the Rails. So before we start, one of the first questions that I would like to discuss with you all and understand is, does anyone here know why Ruby on Rails is named as Ruby on Rails? Anyone? Okay, no one. So the intention was mainly for the Rails word. Rails was meant to be like a Rails tracks, which was expected to be like a guardrails within which your Ruby development flows through, and you can build your web applications. That was the main idea, and that's how the Rails word came to be. But then, why then Ruby on Rails? And the reason for that was something very simple, stupid, and something you can relate with. There was no domain availability. So Rails.org was not available, which is why RubyOnRails.org was something that was chosen that time. Coming back to the topic, reading Rails is a visual walkthrough. So what are the things that we are going to talk about today? Firstly, we will talk about why. We will discuss a little bit about why reading code is important, how it helps. Then secondly, we will also look at a bit of an overview, like how the textual reading looks like and how the visual one looks like. Then we will go into the different approaches, like what other things that we can do, how we can approach it from the different angles to read the code better. And then finally, nothing completes without the AI, right? So I will also be sharing some tips about how to use AI tools to read the code better. So that's all that we are going to cover throughout today. What I would expect is at the end of this talk, you have something written down for yourself to do on the Monday, so that you can maybe look at the website that I have created or look into its source code and see what you can contribute, or take some of the ideas and try exploring any of the projects using the AI tools or the Rails source code itself using the methods and approaches that I'm going to share here. Okay? So we'll start with the main question first. Why read the code, right? So there are two important reasons. First is from the skill sets point of view. you're not treating whatever library that you're using as a black box, something that just works and you don't have any ideas, right? So once you go into the details of reading the source code, it provides you ideas as to what the library is capable of, what it's not capable of, what's the quality of the code that's written there. So that's why it is important. But the main important point for reading the source codes is also that you improve your own skill sets. So whenever you are learning programming, it's always that with the experience you get better. Now, if you are working into a very small startup where you don't have the mentors, what can end up happening is you are into a very small pond and you are looking at methods, tactics, and ways of writing code that is very appropriate and advisable for a small code base. But you don't have an idea about larger code bases or even a smaller code bases, but where the scale is very high. So given these two different challenges, reading the source code from the other gems and other Rails application is something that can provide more ideas into the patterns, ways of writing code, and that's why it is important to read the code. So when you start reading the code, your mentors are not just the people who are writing the code within your company, who you are looking up to, following the best practices from, and the samples from, and the patterns from, but rather what's happening is you're also going out there and looking at the worldwide overview of how people are in general writing the code. So that's why it is important. So that's where we covered the why part. Next we will go into overview and the text side of it. So the first thing then is reading the Rails source code. What are some of the challenges? Has anyone here tried reading Rails source code and stumbled upon any of the challenges, problems? Anyone from the audience? Yeah? Someone at the back? Is there a mic? Ah.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. My name is Keshav. I've read a little bit of the real source code. I was working on a gem to anonymize database columns. So I stumbled across a problem where, for example, if you know filtered parameters, or
Yeah.
if you know, filter parameters basically filter the, you can't see, for example, password and all those in your Reels logs, right? Because those are filtered. So when I was trying to filter out, when I was trying to anonymize some of the columns, for example, first name, what I noticed is for example, if I filter out name, the prefix and the suffix was also getting filtered. And I looked at the code and I realized that the rejects that they were using is what was doing it. So yeah, that's one story.
Okay. So to summarize, you came across a problem related to the filter parameters, and when you looked at the source code, you understood how it's implemented and why the behavior is in that way, right? Yeah. Here.
Hi, I'm Chetali. So I found the issue that whenever I read a code, I find it difficult to map or backtrace it.
Okay. Okay. So basically you are starting from some place, you are digging down, 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 and at one point you feel that I think I have lost the track of where I started, right? Okay. So yeah, let's continue with our thing. Yeah. So then this is how the textual code looks like for the Rails repository. Of course, it's very small, you can't read anything. I just wanted to demonstrate that it's very hard, that's why the image is done in that way. So yeah. So then the other thing, this number 64, can anyone guess like what that number could be? No? So last year I had a slide and the number was 123 in Ruby source code, and this time around it's a 64. And that number is number of extensions that are available to the different files in the Rails source code. So there are 64 types of different extensions in the Rails source code. So what is more important is when so much of the extensions and the file types are available, what is more important to do is look at and decide what to not focus on, what to not read. Okay, so when getting into reading the Rails source code, the main important point is not where to start, but not where not to start. So remove all of that distraction and then it becomes a little simpler. So then the other important part is, so the visual rails. So I was trying to create and come up with some of the graphs and stats to show the dependencies and everything very well. But then what I thought was last year I had done that. So last year it was 2024 and I had created some diagrams for Ruby source code. But because it was 2024 and GenAI was available, what I did was I did not use any static library or any diagrams, simple tools, static tools to build it. Rather, I created 3D visual images using the image generators that time. I was thinking of doing the same this time around, but now we are in 2025 and the GenAI has progressed so much that I thought, no, simple visuals are not good. I want it to be interactive. So that's when I built this tool or the website. You can visit it at betacraft.github.io/visualrails. I will show it. So with this, what you can do is you can literally see the interactive map of all the components within the Rails and then interact with that. Does that sound impressive? I don't think that's impressive because like it's just clutter, right? Too many arrows and everything going around everywhere. But I can show something cool, like you can pick something and then move around and then see how many dependencies and whatnot is there. Does that sound cool? No? This was just for fun, so of course it's not usable. What's more usable is this way of looking at it, hierarchical structure. So we have a Rails, then there is a Rails tie, and then we have all the important gems or the core gems that we can say. But even now, if you look at this structure of the code, what is happening is there are too many arrows. And one of the reasons for too many arrows is this thing called active support. So if I remove the arrows related to the active support, now it's looking a little bit more cooler and more manageable, right? And that's the thing. The active support is the reason why many people, when they write too much Ruby into the Rails ecosystem and go and try to write Ruby or pure Ruby code base, they struggle with it because they fail to understand what all things that Rails has given them when writing the code into the Rails source code. And all that enrichment of Ruby itself is something that comes from the active support. So that's why it is important to understand that. And then there is another of a layout called as a circular also. So you can put all of these things in a circular fashion and also see the dependencies mapped out. So then the next step is, it just doesn't stop here. What you can also do is, let's say, click on something like action cable. So it will show all the details about the statistics. I don't think that all the lines of code stats are correct yet. I will get that fixed. But apart from that, the key modules dependencies used by is something that is accurate representations. And the way this is generated right now is, I decided that I don't want to depend on GenAI to decide on what are the libraries and how they are related with each other. Instead, what's been done here is I have written the Ruby scripts that do static analysis of the Rails source code, and then it generates the JSON files that have all this dependency data, and then the graphs are pulled out. So what information that you're looking at here is pretty deterministic. You can't say that, okay, it's some hallucinations there. So that's that. And then you can select the action cable, you can see all the details, and if you click again on it, you also see, okay, what are the subclasses and dependencies further into it. I'm not sure if it is, the contrast is pretty good and if it is visible for you to read about, but then you can play around with this and see. The next, some of the layouts that I'm planning to work on will also fix some other layout issues. For example, if right now you go into something that is pretty big, like active record, it would be fun to see this. Yeah, see? This graph that I have right now for the hierarchical and circular is not the best one for this representation. So I'm just adding tree diagrams that will make it much, much easier and simpler. So that way you can see, okay, what are the classes available within the active record. Then you can click on any of the class to expand that, and then you should be able to see what are the public methods available. So the way you can progress through these things is pretty much fast. So that's the idea here. Next, what I have is different approaches, but before I go into that, what I would like to quickly show is a bit of a talk about the skill sets. So as I was saying, I have a very good skill sets. I like travel and all those things, right? Those are the hobby parts. One of the skill set that I have is also the procrastination. How many here have that skill? Oh, really nice. A lot of people. I make sure that I spend a lot of time ensuring that I develop my this skill. So that's there too. Like for example, to prepare a talk like this, the benefit of procrastination is you can get a lot of things done in a very short time. Like you can have last 4 hours from like 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning until now, and a lot of code written and a lot of slides added. That's the benefit of having procrastination. You can get a lot of done in a very short time. But then the downside is you have already spent last 2 weeks not doing anything else because you want to work on building your talk and not working on the talk either. So that's like a bit of a con. Like I can demonstrate that like with a graph. So I generated a graph of how many lines of code I wrote for this particular tool that I built, Visual Rails. And as you can see, I wanted to show it to the internal team. That's why on 5th of September, you can see a very big graph because 4 hours before that presentation, I ensured that I have something ready to show that to the team. And then there is a long gap. And then it kicked in that I wanted to work on this and present it. So 11th September is a day when nothing happened. So that was a build-up day. And then 12th and 13th, you can see 13th is just 12 a.m. onwards, how much of a work has been done. Yeah. So now let's go into the different approaches of it. So in terms of different approaches, what we have here is looking at the overview of the Rails source code is a one way to look at it. What I feel is that's not the best way to look into the Rails source code. There are some other ways. And what I feel is these are the more relevant ways, and you would rather get more return on investment if you read the source code using these methodologies. So let's go through that. The database query flow is the first one, where what we have here is the core component view. And then if you click on the notes, it will also show what all things are happening. So on the page 1, we have a simple active record base and the simple overview of all the related classes and structures. Now if I go to the page number 2, this is the lazy query initialization. So what's happening here is I just have a user.where and I'm not calling .2a on that query. And with that, what's happening is the query is getting generated, but only an active record relational object is getting created instead of actually a SQL getting fired and the records being pulled from the database. So this is the very simplistic implementation of how a query would go and run into the active record. So using this database query flow, the first step is you can do the lazy query initialization. So then now you can look into, okay, what are the classes that are getting involved? What are the methods that are getting involved for this one? So all of that is available here in a diagram format. And then there is also a note regarding that. So that's step number 1. Then there is a simple query execution. So in the simple query execution, what's happening is you just have a user.where, you're finding something, and then it's calling dot first on it. So now you're actually touching the database. So the entire active record stack is getting involved, and this is the flow as to which classes and what all modules are getting involved for that. And then the next one is the query with the joins. So then as the pages are going forward, we are increasing the complexity a little every time. So the first one was a query without doing anything, not even touching the database. The second was a query with 2A, so it actually touched the database. The third one now we have is a query with the joins. The fourth one is more complex query, which also has the includes. And finally, just the SQL generation pipeline. So just a particular part and what all things are happening within that. So this is how it is structured, and then you can go through each one and see the notes regarding that. So I would say this talk is something that there is a lot of homework you can take away from this. Go to this website and explore multiple ways of it. Now the second part, or a second approach to exploring this particular way of reading the Rails source code is looking at how when someone opens browser and types in a website, let's say betacraft.com, what all things are happening. Let's say there is a Rails application sitting behind and serving. What all things happen before you get the response. Now that you would say a typical interview question that gets discussed as well, right? But what I just felt is there are a lot of nuances. So we'll quickly touch base on those smaller nuances first and then go into the details. So for example, if it is an asset that is locally cached in your browser itself, then it is a flow number one. So this is like a before hitting the Rails. And what's happening here is you have a browser cache, and then it checks that the browser cache is present, and the response is just picked up from there. So it is possible that there are some requests which are not even reaching the server. They are being uh, sent from the browser itself. Now what's the next level of cache? Then there is a CDN cache. So if your data and the content is available within the CDN, then it will be being rendered from there itself. What next? Then there are web server static files. So for example, if your Rails application is served to not load and serve the static files, and you have configured your Nginx or whatever application server correctly for it, then wherever there is a request coming in for the static files, it will completely skip the Rails and just pick the files from the static files directory where compiled assets are residing and serve it. So Rails application is not coming into the picture at all. What next? Then there is a load balancer health check. So these kind of requests also return from earlier. Then there is a rate limiting. So this will sometimes may hit the load balancer and go back, or sometimes if you have implemented in Rails application, then it can come there. And then finally, what we have is WAF or a security block. So these are some examples where if someone is trying to load your application, the request might not even hit the Rails application. But what we are most interested in is this one. What's happening when a request is actually hitting the Rails application. So from this onward, from the page number 2 to 9, we will be looking at a different cases where the request is actually hitting the Rails application and what are the scenarios. And again, we will follow the same style. We will start with something that is as simple as a very simplistic request and then increase the complexity. So this first one that we have, route direct response. So what we have here in the notes you can see is it is bypassing the controllers and Lambda functions, wherein it is simply responding from your routes file itself. So a request comes and you have a routes that are simply sending the response from the routes file, right? This one. Oh, sorry. HTTP request second position. Yeah. Then the second example is a middleware response. When the request is coming in, you have the routes, but then there is something in the middleware that is responsible for responding on your behalf. So the request is not going to any part within your MVC stack. So how that flow will look like, what are the conditionals for that? So all of that is something that you can see here. Then what next? Then there is a controller text response. So this example, what's happening here is a request is actually coming in, going through the routes, coming to your controller, all through the middleware and everything. And the controller is simply responding with something in a JSON or in a text. So nothing else is being touched. So what all classes get touched in that? So this is that example. Then we have a controller with view, controller with model and view, then controller with multi-model request, and then what happens when there is an API JSON response, and lastly, what happens when there is a streaming response. So all these cases are covered that you can go and explain, explore and understand for yourself. So this is all that I have, and these are all examples like database query flow, HTTP request flow. Rails boot process is also one of the example that I have, but that's something still under the work. So I would say that it's a work in progress. So these are all examples or different approaches to come into it. I would also like to hear any ideas that you would have as to how you would like to explore the Rails with any of the approaches. And the final point that we have is a code reading with the AI tools. So for this, I will say how to read code better with the AI tools. So there is a classical approach, which is bottom to top. So what she mentioned, right, that when you are trying to read a code, you are reading the classes, methods, associating them with each other, understanding what are the flows that are happening, and you are building all of that structure in your brain while you are going line by line through the code. So that is called as a bottom to top approach. You are reading the code base and then generating the overview of it in your mind. But then with the AI, what is possible is also the top to bottom approach, wherein what happens is you rather take those files, put it through the AI tools, and then ask it to generate the overview and structure for you. So then that way you are understanding, okay, what needs to be done at a higher level first, and then you start reading the code bases. So this then solves that problem much more better. Yeah. So for example, the tools of choice for me would be the Claude Code, but then apart from that, there is also Gemini CLI, which is completely free. I think with about 1,000 requests per day, free kind of a limit. So it is really good for reading through code bases and experimenting with it as well. And then next, Notebook is also a good tool. You can put a lot of code in there, but what I personally feel is not anymore for the code reading particularly, because there are a lot of good tools that weren't available last year that are available this year. So to conclude, so tips on using LLMs, summarize, there are three different levels. So for example, when I am summarizing something as complex as active record, I wouldn't ask it to generate the entire summary. Rather, I would ask it to look through the entire classes and their associations, create a bigger summary, and then maybe create a smaller summary, and then maybe something that is 2 paragraph long. So then I will start with the 2 paragraph long, get an overview idea, then start with something that is 6 paragraph long, and then finally into something that is like 4 pages long. So that way then even summary you have a different levels of it, and then you should be able to visualize it better. And then once you do that visualization, the final secret ingredient is of course the curiosity that you have. So that's all the conclusion. And the main conclusion is just to go out there and have fun. So that's it. Couple of thanks for some of the team members who did the code reviews, and I have stickers. Thank you.